Okay, let's look at the basic types of businesses, and then we'll look at how those are structured as well. So the three basic types of businesses are going to be a service business, merchandising business, and a manufacturing business. So service businesses sell services. Examples would be accountants, lawyers. Also up here we see painting companies, automotive repair shops. They're not selling a physical product, but rather just the service. Merchandising companies actually sell physical products to customers. Examples would be grocery stores like Walmart, Home Depot, automobile dealerships, sporting goods stores, any kind of company that sells you a physical good. And then we have manufacturers. They take raw materials and convert it into something else. So they actually are the ones that produce the goods. Examples on automobile manufacturers, clothing manufacturers, Coke, Pepsi, they make soft drinks. All right, let's move on to the various types of business enterprises here. So I've got four. I'll add a fifth as we go along. So one basic type of structure for a business enterprise is going to be a sole proprietorship. That's going to be owned by just one person. A business owned by two or more people is what we call a partnership. A business organized as a separate legal entity under state corporation law and having ownership divided into transferable shares of stock is what we call a corporation. Now, an LLC, or limited liability company, is a flexible form of enterprise that blends elements of partnership and a corporate structure. And we also have something called an S Corp, which is similar to an LLC. And let's break each one of those down a little bit more for you. So the advantages to owning a sole proprietorship, remember, it's just one owner. It's very easy to form. Since you're the only owner, you can dictate how you want the business to be run. You don't have anyone else telling you what to do. Another benefit is the business isn't actually taxed. All of the income that you make in the business flows into the individual's tax, normal tax, and it's taxed at the individual's tax rate. Disadvantage here, and this is probably, these first two are probably the biggest. So the owner is liable for all acts and debts. So any debts that are incurred by the business, the owner himself or herself is going to be solely responsible for repaying those. And the biggest drawback here is unlimited personal financial liability. So if the business gets sued for $5 million and loses, that sole proprietor, that single owner, is going to be the person who is then responsible for paying back that liability on their own. There's also limited financing opportunities, meaning you can go to the bank and get what they'll give you and ask your friends and neighbors for money, but beyond that, it's really hard to get money for a sole proprietorship. Typically, you also have to pledge your own assets. So if you own a home, the bank is going to want that as security, or a car, or any kind of asset that you might have. Typically, there's some limited talent there. Sole proprietors, usually a person will be very strong in one or two areas and then not so strong in a couple of other areas, like maybe good in marketing and sales, but not so good in accounting. And technically, if the business dies, or if the business owner dies, the business actually has to cease and be restructured and reorganized in a different type of business. Partnership has many of the same similarities that a sole proprietorship has. It's easy to form. Now we can start to see a better variety of talents because we can get people maybe who have different strengths. There's still little government regulation involved, and the income still flows into the individual's personal income taxes. Similar drawbacks that we saw with the sole proprietorship. Still limited fundraising. Bank's still gonna ask you to pledge your own assets as collateral. There's still that unlimited legal liability. A big drawback to partnerships is the possible interpersonal conflicts that you find. You'll hear many partners, they start out really well, and then one partner sees the business going in one direction and another partner sees it going in another direction, and there's some problems and the partnership has to dissolve. Corporation is the third type of ownership, and it has some pretty good advantages. One is the ability to raise funds from the public. So you can issue stock if you're a corporation. So all you have to do is convince some people that you have a good business idea and they want to give you your money, give you their money in exchange for stock or ownership in the company. And as an investor, you're only liable for your investment. So if you give a startup corporation $2,000 and they go out of business, you're only liable for your $2,000. Also, there's some transferability of ownership. So a lot of stock, again, if I own stock in a company, all I have to do is convince someone else to give me money for my stock, and then it'll transfer. It can change hands there. And usually we can get more talented people because we can issue stock or ownership in the company. Disadvantaged corporations, costly to form. It's not terribly costly, but more difficult to form than a partnership or a sole proprietorship. You have to abide by the laws in the state of incorporation. Typically that involves hosting annual stockholders meetings, filling out some paperwork for the state. And the biggest drawback for a corporation is double taxation. So the corporation is actually taxed on its earnings, typically around 35%. And then when they pay dividends back to the stockholders, which is how they share the income they make with their stockholders, their owners, those stockholders are also going to end up paying taxes on that income as well. So that double taxation does add up, and it is a big drawback for companies. I earlier mentioned S corporations, and those are similar to corporations in that it is a separate legal entity and there is limited liability of owners. So S corp, similar to LLC, we have some benefits of a partnership and a corporation. The reason it's similar to a partnership is that corporate income does flow directly to the owner's personal tax returns. Here's somewhat of a drawback for an S corp. So any corporate earnings must be distributed based on ownership percentage. So once that is established initially, the earnings or losses will be distributed based on those previously determined percentages. A limited liability corporation is going to be similar to an S corporation and a normal corporation in that it has, again, separate legal entity, and it has limited liability of owners. And then it's similar to a partnership. Again, the income flows directly to the personal owner's income tax returns, but there is some flexibility then in how earnings are distributed among owners. So one owner can say, oh wow, I ended up putting in twice as much time as you did. I think I deserve more of the profits. And if they all agree to that, that income can be distributed at any time the way the owners agree, rather than with an S corporation how it was determined previously. Hope that gives you a quick rundown of the basic types of businesses and forms of ownership for companies.